Wow, this game is so cool. I wonder what we're gonna be doing when I'm older. What game will we be playing then? I bet it's gonna be amazing. What the fuck? It's 2022, and yet I still keep going back to EQ. But what makes us go back year after year to the same game that we've been playing for really almost 2 decades? Now, granted, I, like many, have left Everquest and gone on to other games and had good times. I've enjoyed myself in other MMOs. Some of them are newer and some of them are older. But I keep coming back. Why? Why can I not leave this game? Why does it keep pulling me back in? Like now, while I'm currently playing on the Vaniki server casually, if you want to come hang out and say hi, I'm Redbeard Flynn on there. That server's been a little bit of fun so far. But what makes people go back to progression servers like me? What makes people stay on the live game or go to emulators like Project 99? The answer is not going to be simple, and it's going to be kind of individual. The answer that I have for me is probably different than your answer, but there may be some similarities, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about in this video. But I'd really like to hear from you. What is the reason why you keep going back? And if not EverQuest, what game do you keep going back to? What is an MMO that you just can't leave, that you just can't move beyond? Why? Let us know down in the comments section right below the video here. And while you're down there, there's these other buttons that you could press. You know, I think if you've been on this platform longer than 30 minutes, you've probably been asked at least 30 times. So I'm not going to ask you to do those things. The first reason so many of us come back to a game like EverQuest has to be nostalgia. P99 is peak nostalgia, but that's not all. Each year, EverQuest releases new progression servers, and inevitably, there's a huge rush to join these servers to the point where there are queues and server crashes, and Co-Carnage gets streamer privilege logins. Can I have streamer privilege logins? I'm on Twitch. There's a slight difference between the viewership of Co-Carnage and me. There's a couple number places. But there's even nostalgia in the live game. Just look at the most recent expansions. Empires of Kunark, Ring of Scale, and the one we don't talk about because it ruins this argument, Burning Lands, Torment of Velius, Claws of Vishan, and Terror of Luckland, the most recent one. I mean, would any of us be surprised if the expansion we get for 2022 has something to do with Luckland? Darkpaw knows the draw of nostalgia, both in the live game and on their progression servers. They're providing a portal back to when you were younger and experienced the game for the first time, banking on those nostalgic feelings to keep you coming back. And they work, because you do keep coming back. I keep coming back. But nostalgia alone isn't enough. So what else? Well, the core component is gonna be gameplay. There is a gameplay loop that appeals, and for MMOs like EverQuest, it provides a different style than most modern MMOs. The pace is slower and more tactical. The danger is intense, and setbacks can last hours, especially without proper rezzing to recover experience. Most of the world is open and non-instanced, excluding the live game, which has leaned pretty heavily into instances for years. But your method of advancement leans toward grinding NPCs, not questing. Again, excluding the live game. Oh, and let's not forget, a single NPC can be deadly. This leads to the need for a class role that is of vital importance, CC, or crowd control. Class roles are in the DNA of Everquest, and each class has a unique playstyle and role in groups. This leads to 4 pillars of a group that you need to really progress very far or very fast. Out of the 6 players, you generally need a CC, a DPS, a tank, and a healer, at least to do it well. Now, of course, there are going to be some groups that can do things a little bit differently, but generally that's what you need, and then you fill out the other 2 spots as necessary. This leads to cooperative gameplay that feels slower, but more dangerous than modern MMOs. That cooperative gameplay requires you to communicate and talk, and that leads neatly into our next point. Social. Everquest has been referred to in other places and on this channel as the prettiest chat room. You cannot take the social out of Everquest. You need other players to progress. Grouping is by far more efficient than soloing in most instances, and some classes at different points of the game can't solo at all. The game was built around the idea of grouping with others and raiding with them. This is where the game shines. A game like Everquest encourages social friction. Well, what is social friction? Essentially, this means putting players in situations where you have to interact. You need to group. Kills can be stolen through DPS. Loot is limited. NPCs are limited. Zone space is limited. Essentially, you must either compete or cooperate, and sometimes a little bit of both. On a populated server, it's unavoidable. And in previous iterations of the game, your reputation would often precede you. It still does to an extent, but the servers and populations are more finite than they were back in the heyday of Everquest, and now you have server transfers and name changes. But still, if you're a big enough dick, people will remember. I'll remember.
We'll definitely remember.
The last reason I have is probably something that fits almost every game we used to play. You might even say I'm just restating and reframing nostalgia here, but I think there's some important differences. We're talking about familiarity. This isn't about the nebulous feelings we get remembering something we enjoyed when we were younger. This is about the ease of entry. To those of us who played EverQuest, it's easy to pick up again. If you're on a progression server, you remember the skills, the commands, the NPCs, and the zones. It's just something easy to get right into. It's similar for those who are playing on Project 99. On live, this is a bit different, but the core of the game is still there. The learning curve may be steeper, depending on when the last time you played was, but the basic premise is still there. Except for mob grinding. What the f***, Tormenta Velius? I really wanted to like that expansion. That expansion made me quit the progression server. I could not handle. You know what? That's probably a the opposite of my Planes of Power video that I need to do at some point. Why Tormenta Velius made me quit EverQuest and then cycle back to progression servers before Tormenta Velius. But anyway. When you pick up a new MMO, it can sometimes be overwhelming. I know there were some that I just gave up because the mechanics were so completely different to what I knew. I didn't feel like investing the time to learn them. I wasn't tied to the game that way. EverQuest is always there, like that old shitty rusty bike you rode as a kid. You may need to put some new wheels on it and a new seat, and it'll probably still make your ass sore after you go for a ride, but at least you can count on it to be the same. You can expect the gears not to work properly. You can expect the brakes to fail when you need them to, but you at least know how to get on and get some forward momentum. At least that is why I keep going back to old MMOs like EverQuest. I mean, my best experiences in the game came from 2016 to 2020. And that was long after I first picked up the game in right around 2000, roughly when the Ruins of Kunark launched. So what about you? What makes you return to old MMOs? If you haven't told us already, let us know down in the comments, because I really want to know. But there's also some MMOs that we can't go back to. You know, MMOs that really may have closed too soon, and some that close surprisingly fast, perhaps too fast to make that connection that would make us go back. If you want to join me in lamenting those games that we might want to go back to and can't, at least in an official capacity, take a look at this video right here. 79 days? 79 days. My name is Redbeard Flynn. Thank you so much for the gift of your time today. I really appreciate it. I hope you had a good time with this video. I look forward to seeing you again next week.